Part 72. The Mad Cultivator. Author, Xianxia. Chapter 713. July 13 is when the wind rises. It was another year when the wind rose. This is already unknown how many times she came here. She stood quietly under a saffron tree, which bloomed in a different way. The breeze rose lightly, throbbing her hair, and also brought a touch of extravagant subtle fragrance. She is not a sentimental person, but this year she has become sentimental. Maybe, women in love are more emotional. But her love is just secret love, only love. He didn't know. Xianxia thought so. Suddenly there was a slight smile on her face, and she thought of the scene of fighting with someone last year. Someone always talks indecently. This reminds her that she blushes again, and the mangroves, red flowers, and red cheeks form a beautiful picture. But she looks sad again. When will that hooligan go out? For this issue, Xianxia looked forward to but was afraid. She was looking forward to seeing a hooligan earlier, but she was afraid that when he came out, it was better that he would never come out when it was time to separate. But will he never come out? Obviously not. He is not that kind of person. He is never willing to be lonely, unwilling to be calm. To what extent will he resume cultivation after coming out? The foundation is built by the elixir left by his grandfather, but why can he also build the foundation of the 5 elements? When he joined Iron Arm Demon, he wanted to learn the magic skills of Iron Arm, so it doesn't matter the spiritual route. These problems haunted Xianxia for a long time, but she could see that Yekong would never stay in the foundation period like her forever, and he would succeed, and he would one day become a true monarch, and even ascend. But he can never be promoted, nor can he accompany him. Thinking of this, Xianxia's face was sad again. She is not a sentimental person, but she thinks too much. While she was standing alone under the mangrove tree, she was sorrowful. Suddenly, there was a loud noise in the direction of the outer court of Yanfu. Xianxia looked up strangely, a pair of Qiushui eyes blinked inexplicably. According to reason, the Yan family would not have such a loud noise. Suddenly a bad feeling came to her mind. Sure enough, I immediately saw the steward Yanfu running in a hurry, and shouted from a distance, "Miss, hurry up. The person who painted the voice of the magic zone came to arrest you." Xianxia raised her eyebrows and asked in confusion, "Pioneering monster? What did you do to me?" "I don't know. The women who came here were very aggressive." "The master asked you to go to other areas to avoid the limelight." Yanfu rushed over and quickly handed a small black bag full of spirits. "I'm not going." Xianxia pushed away Lingxi, and instead walked towards the front hall. It stands to reason that because of Yekong's relationship, the Yan family has a good relationship with Hui and Mozong. The voice Mozong also takes good care of Yan's family. It's so strange that she left the iron painting world today. This is so strange. How could she be like this? Just leave your parents and run away? In the front hall of Yan Mansion, she was standing in a row of voodoo women, surrounded by the old couple of Yan family, one by one, with a cold face, and Fijian shot. The leading woman was even more arrogant and sternly said, "Old man Yan. Your daughter passed the trick in the last year's election, using my elder's orders, to arrest and return to the crime." The lead woman shouted, and the female disciples behind them shouted in unison, "Old man. Give up your daughter." Yan Fenjiun was so anxious that his heart was sweating, and his heart was depressed. It has been a year since this happened. How can it be said again? Wu Xiaoun showed the calmness of every lady, and came forward and said, "Haha, this Taoist dare to ask what to call." The lead woman raised a brow, and said with a loud voice, "Chu Fanglin." It turned out to be Chu Daiu. Wu Xiaoun said with a smile, "My son-in-law Yekong has a good relationship with the true ruler Huang Shishi Zhenjun. Can you get on the net?" Wu Xiaoling was interrupted by Chu Fanglin's anger after she finished speaking. "Huang Shishi has affair with mortals, that is the shame of the painting and sound demon sect. Now this elder is under the full responsibility of the elder Zhu Lingfei, and it will never happen again. As soon as Chu Fanglan said, the situation became clear. It is clear that after elder Zhu Lingfei took power, he wanted to get revenge on Huang Shishi, so he deliberately came to the trouble of Yan's family. Yan Fenjiun went out and accompanied the laughter. In fact, all the rumors are rumors outside, and our Yan family has always been doing business properly. No matter who is the director of the picture and sound magic sect, our Yan family is willing to act like dogs and horses. Labor. Yan Fenjiun's words mean compromise. We only do business in the strict family. No matter who is the master of the paintings and sounds, if you need it, start talking. Chu Fanglan looked at Yan Fenjiun, nodded and smiled, and said, Yande, I really understands people, then I might as well say straight. Knowing you is not as simple as asking for trouble. Yan Fenjiun quickly laughed and said, Tao friends, please tell, if the Yan family can do things, Yan will definitely go to the fire. Chu Fanglan was so sure, knowing that today's purpose is to be achieved. She said, you don't have to be old to go to the fire. In fact, although Yan Shuai's crime is serious, you can give enough compensation. Dare to come for extortion, but they only need money and don't die, that's fine. Yan Fenjiun just wanted to speak, but was stopped by Chu Fanglan's wave of hands. Don't interrupt me when I speak. Yan Fenjiun's old face suddenly turned red. Damn, this woman is too shameless. You are in the middle of Dandan, I am also in the middle of Dandan, why do you use this tone to talk to me? But there is no way. There are so many people. There is a whole mozong behind him, and Yan Fenjiun has to put up with anger. Okay, please, Yan Fenjiun said in a deep voice. Old guy dare to face? Chu Fanglan snorted and said, let's make it clear, our voodoo magic lord wants you to make the best dandan and the best dandan recipe, and the refining experience. Yan Fenjiun knew it. It turned out that elder Zhu Lingfei was not so simple in finding extortion, but was directed at Dan Fang. However, Yan Fenjiun thought again that his family really couldn't fight with Hui and Mozong. The bachelor didn't suffer the loss. Dan Fang wasn't Yan's family anyway, otherwise he would persuade his daughter to give them Dan Fang. Believe it? Ye Kong was able to understand the exit. But at this moment, a clear and loud rejection came from outside the house. Impossible. Yan Shuai strode into the hall and said sternly to Chu Fanglan's righteous words, Dan Fang is the root of all Dan shops. How can you give away outsiders? What is the difference between waiting for this and Ming? This kind of robber behavior, I believe Iron Arm Demon will not ignore it. The Mad Cultivator. Author, Xianxia. Chapter 714. 714 people died for the money. Chu Fanglan saw Yan Shuai coming out, and laughed out loud. I painted the magic demon ruled the iron painting world for hundreds of years, but the Iron Arm Devil has just taken over, but in many ways we still rely on our help. You think this little thing, the Iron Arm Devil, will give you somewhere? Yan Shuai said, why can't you turn your heads? My husband, Ye Kong, is a disciple of the Iron Arm Demon Sovereign. Yan Shuai has been accustomed to calling Ye Kong the husband, but Chu Fanglan and others already knew that they were false marriages, so this sentence immediately became the laughing stock of Chu Fanglan's teasing. Yan Shuai, you are really a shameless stupid woman. I ask you, why are you still married after you have been married for more than a year? Could it be that you are not iron slabs? It was humiliation, and she and her disciples immediately laughed. You, Yan Shuai had suffered such humiliation, and now her face flushed, and her tears turned in her beautiful eyes. When Yan Fenjiun saw her daughter being humiliated, she was furious and said, Chu Fanglan, you don't want to bully people too much. Otherwise, my husband fights with you. Huh, do you think I'm afraid of you? Tell you, there are still great people waiting outside, Chu Fanglan rolled her eyes and crossed her hips and said, "Want us to go? It's very simple. First, let's make Dan Fang what we want. Come out. The second is Yan Shuai and us to go back to Shanlian for a lifetime of elixir, you choose." And Chu Fanglan smiled arrogantly and said, "Don't expect Zi Yanlong to come forward and tell you that he will soon take off. At that time, it is difficult to say who is the owner of Taihua realm." This is another very shocking news. Yan Fenjiun did imagine that the jade-armed god appeared, but now it seems that this is delusional. The Xian dragon will never offend the audiovisual monster at this time. Take a step back and say that even if Zi Yanlong came forward to help. After that, what will happen after Xian dragon soars? The Yan family will still survive in the iron painting realm. The voodoo magic sect wants to kill their family. There are opportunities. Yan Fenjiun's fantasy was broken in an instant, and he could not help thinking about the future. Shuhui, or... Yan Fenjiun looked at Yan Shuai. "Dad," Yan Shuai shook her head at Yan Fenjiun and turned to Chu Fanglan loudly. "Dan Fang, who is also the best and Dan who needs to raise Yuan Dan, is not our Yan family. Shuai promised that she would never leak it to the third or, I can do it, so I will never tell you." Chu Fanglan thought she would get Dan Fang easily, but unexpectedly Yan Shuai refused, and she was immediately angry. "No? Then go back to alchemy with us," Chu Fanglan said, and waved his hand, ordering his subordinates, "Tie me this girl." More than a dozen disciples brought by Chu Fanglan were real people who built the foundation. Of course, it was easy to deal with Yan Shuai in the early stage of foundation construction. 4 disciples dispersed to surround Yan Shuai, and the other 2 disciples took out a bundle of fairy rope from the storage bag. "I fight with you." Yan Fenjiun saw her daughter about to be arrested, and Lao Hu rushed to the top of his head. He opened his mouth and his magic weapon flew out. To say that Yan Fenjiun's natal magic weapon is also special, short stick-shaped, one big and one small, as if it is a medicine pestle. Yan Fenjiun is very confident in his magic weapon. The magic weapon can be large or small, it can be split into hundreds, you can use a big one as a hammer, you can use a thin one as a stab, and the most outrageous will also spit fire. Pap, the natal magic weapon is much more powerful than this kind of magical device. After 2 beeps, 2 bundled scents were blown away. Chu Fanglan's mouth sneered, "Yan Fenjiun, you're forcing me to shoot. You thought I was afraid of you. Then try it." Chu Fanglan spit out her magic weapon. Her magic weapon was a small jinpsa. Her magic weapon is also very special, turned out to be a defensive magic weapon. Most people's magic weapons are flying swords or other things that are offensive, but some people use defensive magic weapons. Your own safety is the most important. The Xia ancestor with the turtle shell that Ye Kong killed in the southern capital is like this. The same is true of Chu Fanglan. This jinpsa can not only play a defensive role, it is more important, it also has a function that can trap the opponent's magic weapon. Yan Fenjiun didn't know how bad it was. He manipulated the medicine pestle to hit the jinpsa, but the surface of the jinpsa suddenly sunken, and then he wrapped the medicine pestle like a palm. Burning, Yan Fenjiun began to drink. You can hear the sound of flames from the medicine pestle in the jinpsa, but the jinpsa did not know what it was made of, and did not move at all. Still, the flames of you will not let the medicine pestle come out. Chu Fanglan sneered, "Yan Daiyu, it's time to look at me." While Yan Fenjiun's magic weapon could not be moved, she raised her hand and shot with a top-grade flying sword weapon, taking Yan Fenjiun straight. As the owner of the Yan family, Yan Fenjiun's alchemy is rich in experience, but his combat experience is not rich. He was already in full control of the magic weapon, but he did not expect the other person to suddenly throw a flying sword, and he was caught off guard. Fei Jian flashed straight into the light. Well, panicked and trapped, Yan Fenjiun was magically backswept at this critical moment, spurting blood. Feng Yun, Wu Xiaoling saw that her husband was in an urgent situation, and regardless of being against 4 disciples, she immediately mobilized her weapon to rescue him. Dang, Chu Fanglan's flying sword was repelled Niang. Xiaoling. Although Yan Fengjiun was rescued, Wu Xiaoling was severely injured by several other disciples who broke through the spiritual shield. Shu Hui, think of a way, follow yet. Wu Xiaoling was thinking of her daughter at the most critical moment of her life. She wanted to say, let her daughter find a way to break through and follow Yekong to leave quickly. But how could Yan Shuai leave? She hugged Wu Xiaoling, her eyes filled with tears, and said loudly, Mother, I will never leave. Wu Xiaoling was anxious, and spit out another blood, staring at her eyes, unable to say a word. You child, Yan Fengjiun scolded angrily, but also knew that this time was not the time to reprimand Yan Shuai, and quickly grabbed a handful of finest but also dan into Wu Xiaoling's mouth, muttering in his mouth, Xiaoling, hurry up and eat, it's okay, you still have to save. Chu Fanglan on the side took a step forward, and said arbitrarily, no one can save you. I think you'll be more honest, hand over Dan Fang. Otherwise, we will really kill. Chu Fanglan waved her hand and shouted, Ji Jianzhen. More than a dozen disciples behind her all threw flying swords. Under the leadership of Chu Fanglan's flying swords, 15 flying swords surrounded a family of 3 in the hall. Each sword shot skyward sword light, like a beam of light. Open the roof of the hall. It's a man's fortune and death for food. At this moment, are you still not willing to surrender Dan Fang? Chu Fanglan said fiercely outside the sword array, and the white light on the sword array reflected her beautiful face. Terror. She's moved. Indeed, people die for food and death. But, it's not them. Suddenly, a man's voice came from the backyard direction, and then a figure surrounded by purple smoke appeared. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Mad Cultivator. Author, Xianxia. Chapter 715. 715 Open your eyes and look again. The person who suddenly appeared was Yekong, but now Yekong is very weird, and the whole body is shrouded in purple smoke. The purple smoke seems to be on fire, and it keeps evaporating and erupting. Everyone present was horrified. The Yan family, the voicing demon sect, and the Yan family's descendants all knew Yekong and could hear that it was Yekong's voice, but his current appearance made everyone faint. Chu Fanglan frowned, and whispered, is this Yekong? A real person next to Ziji immediately whispered, it looks like Yekong, the sound is the same, but the purple smoke is too big to see clearly. Chu Fanglan asked again, what is this magic skill for him? Purple smoke all over his body? What is the poisonous plague magic skill? Everyone shook their heads, and none of them had heard of this strange magic. Looks like the whole body is smoking, only self-immolation will be the case. In the sword array, Yan Shuai also saw Yekong. She was so familiar with Yekong that she knew he was coming when she heard the sound. She couldn't even figure out what happened to the purple smoke on Yekong, but just shouted anxiously, Brother Ye, go quickly. Yekong didn't answer, walked to the door of the hall, stood outside where there was light, and stood still. Chu Fanglan thought Yekong was scared, and she didn't want to do anything to Yekong. After all, Yekong is Zi Yanlong's disciple. If he starts against Yekong, he may really force Zi Yanlong out. So Chu Fanglan said, Yekong, there is nothing for you here. This is a matter for me to draw the sounds of the demon and the Yan family. Don't worry about it. Outside the hall, Yekong's body moved, and a thicker purple smoke rose. He asked in a cold voice, Ye is the son-in-law of the Yan family, that is all known in the iron painting realm. How could it be without me? What's up? Chu Fanglan laughed, Yekong,
everyone now knows that you are just married to Xianxia, and I advise you not to go down this muddy water, otherwise. Chu Fanglan sneered, and uttered a few words, "You can't protect yourself." Ha ha. Ye Kong seemed to have heard a joke and laughed in the smoke. As his body trembled, the transpiration of the purple smoke was trembling. This purple smoke is very bizarre, erupting from all parts of Ye Kong's body. "What's so funny to you?" Chu Fanglan said angrily. "I laugh at you." Chu Fanglan also laughed. "You are the one who speaks loudly. Do you know what my state is? I am in the middle of Dandan. Don't pretend to be a ghost here. I tell you it's not good." Ye Kong replied, "I'm not in the mood to pretend to be a ghost with you. Don't worry, after a while, you will know if you can make it happen." Chu Fanglan took a step forward, holding his arms very sturdy, and laughed, "I'd like to see what kind of famous you are, huh? I don't see it for a year. Is it possible to become ancestor from a mortal?" After she said it, she turned back to her disciples and shouted, "Keep the sword array, don't let them escape." In the sword array, Xianxia watched Ye Kong not leave. She became more anxious and shouted, "Ye Kong, you don't care, it has nothing to do with you, this is our Yan family thing, you go away." "You fought her, come back to Iron Arm Demon." Chu Fanglan heard, haha, laughed, "It looks like you shameless woman has made falsehood come true, deep feelings, ha ha ha." Xianxia didn't care about her, she just kept asking Ye Kong to leave in the sword formation. But Ye Kong remained motionless, waiting for the purple smoke to quietly dissipate. In fact, he didn't know what was going on. He was fine in the quiet room, but as soon as he walked out of the room, he suddenly felt that the gas in his body was volatilizing outward. Finally, those purple smoke became weaker and lighter, Ye Kong's figure gradually revealed. When the last smoke plume emerged from Ye Kong's hairpin, Ye Kong was completely normal. He strode into the room. "No one dares to scold my wife for shamelessly, surnamed Chu, congratulations, you're offending me." Chu Fanglan was a little scared at first, thinking that he was going to work out some evil skills and spells. But now, he can't do anything. Like a year ago, he is still immortal. Chu Fanglan laughed wildly. "Everyone says Ye Yuke is smart and talented, but in my opinion, it is stupid. Arrogant is not afraid of arrogance, but you are arrogant without strength, that is, do not know life or death." In the sword formation, Yan Fenjiun saw Ye Kong still could not see the repair, and he shook his head and bowed his head. And Yan Shuai shouted more anxiously, "Ye Kong, go away. Leave us alone. You are not her opponent." Ye Kong practiced for a year, or did he not resume? Of course not. Ye Kong smiled slightly and said to Chu Fanglan, "Open your dog's eyes and see." What happened to everyone? I saw Ye Kong suddenly have a repair. Refining a layer of gas. Chu Fanglan hadn't had time to say sarcasm. He saw that Ziya Wei jumped to the second floor of gas refining. 3 layers of gas refining. 4 layers of gas refining. 5 layers of gas refining. The scene was very strange. I saw Ye Kong Ziya flipping upwards, and the eyes of the people were getting bigger. God! What is this cultivation method? What is the speed of cultivation? This is not a plane, this is a rocket. Ye Kong's repair was a burst of bean-like growth, which was simply rising. In a blink of an eye, he broke through the gas refining, entered the building base, and began to burst into the Jadan period. Chu Fanglan began to sweat on her head, and she finally realized that she was really in trouble today. When is this kid going to burst? Don't you surpass yourself? If a real baby Yuanjun comes out, he's really dead. Chu Fanglan stayed, Yan Fenjiun also stayed. Yan Shuai's beautiful eyes stared like bronze bells. But Steward Yan Fu took a sigh of air conditioning. Oh my god, wouldn't the new ant be a monster? 7-story building. Building the 8th floor. 9 floors built.
The Yan family has a kind of excitement and impulse in their hearts. Explode. The higher the better. But the video and sound demons and others are secretly crying, do NT rise, please do NT rise again, you rise again, we are really not your opponents. Perhaps their prayers were useful. I saw Yekong's repair for a while and settled down. Building a 10-story building, great success. It can also be called fake Dan. Chu Fanglan's heart hung for a long time and fell to the ground, feeling very happy, and said a long word. Sudden me, but after all, you still, are not as good as me. Everyone in the Yan family was disappointed. I thought Yekong was going to make a terrible repair. Who knew that Jidan's door stopped? Yekong at this moment is much stronger than a year ago, but he is still not Chu Fanglan's opponent. In fact, Yekong was helpless, and Jidan had to eat Jin Danwan. Just like Zuji wants to eat Zujidan, I did eat Jindan pill. What am I going to eat? The Mad Cultivator. Author, Xianxia. Chapter 716. 716 Magic Weapon. However, Yekong is still very satisfied with his current practice. Before losing the practice, it was the 5th floor of the foundation. Now it has reached the 10th floor, which has greatly exceeded his expectations. The next step is to get the Dandan. As for Chu Fanglan in front of to be honest, in the middle of a knot, he really didn't pay attention. He looked at his arm, which was normal. Looking inside Kikai Lingli Cyclone, the power is surging. Sensing the magic weapon in the chest again, I was about to move. Each storage ring or storage bag can be opened as you want. Okay, in good condition, very satisfied Yekong moved his hands and feet, smiled at Chu Fanglan, you scolded my woman for shame, and wounded my mother-in-law seriously, you can go to death. Chu Fanglan laughed, if you hear this from the mouth of Zhenjun, it is still normal. But from your mouth, how do I feel like a joke? Almost everyone feels that someone is really telling a joke, but there is a big difference. Why is it that you, a fake Dan real person, are so arrogant to let the ancestors of Midjidan die? Yekong continued to tell jokes, Chu Fanglan, remember to me in the next life, the outcome of a battle is definitely not just a matter of repair. Of course it is for repairing. What is not for repairing? Chu Fanglan rolled her eyes and drew her Jinpsa magic weapon, proudly, then you are talking about watching treasures. But you do know how to use Dan, at best you are using a device. Magic tools and magic weapons, that's not a grade at all. Yan Fenjiun hurriedly shouted in the line, Xianxia, I know you have the righteousness, but you are not her opponent. She has a powerful magic weapon, and my magic weapon is so powerful that she is not an opponent of her magic weapon. You should hurry away. When you get higher later, get revenge on us. Annoyingly, someone is still not indifferent, and said lightly, actually, I have a lot of magical tools, ancient treasures, spells, which can defeat your magic weapon. But since you want to see my magic weapon, be the dead, as you wish. Everyone in Huasong Mozong laughed, this kid is so ridiculous, so funny, you are a real person, can you spit out magic? You do bring it like that. However, soon they couldn't laugh. Yekong opened his mouth and whispered, a small sword blurted out, and when he came out, he grew to 3 feet in an instant. I saw that the sword was all silver, like a silver rainbow, with the sword straight, and narrowed slightly in the middle, like a thin-waisted beauty. The most special thing is that from time to time, there is a bright silver light flowing from the back to the front of the sword body. This is by no means a reflection of sunlight. This is not only a magic weapon, but also a super powerful magic weapon. Shenbiwa's golden sword. As soon as Yekong attacked Xingyi, he stood with his hands in his hands, but in his calmness, he had the momentum of standing high in the mountains. He didn't say anything, he just smiled with a signboard,
and then pointed at Chu Fanglin. In his eyes, there was a hint of coldness. Silver silk brocade. Pack, Chu Fanglin no longer dared to let his own Jinpsa meet. Jinpsa seemed to be a palm, envisioning Shen Biwa's golden sword just like the medicine pestle. Chu Fanglin is still very confident. This Jinpsa is woven with spiritual silk, and the surface is refined with a substance that absorbs spiritual energy. In other words, there is a thick layer of spiritual power outside the par, so it is very difficult to break through. Moreover, it cannot damage the Kampa itself. But Chu Fanglin met Yekong and Shen Biwa's golden sword. The biggest function of the super magic weapon is to break defenses. Clang! Shen Biwa's golden sword arrived in the center of Jinpsa. Chu Fanglin's eyes flashed with joy and greed, so this good sword is mine. Big! Wrap it, Chu Fanglin yelled. Yekong didn't respond at all, and looked coldly. As if, the flying sword was not his magic weapon at all. I saw Shen Biwa's golden sword. Suddenly, there were extremely fine pieces of golden light, and the stars seemed to be dotted with golden stars and countless eyes, laughing at Chu Fanglin's ignorance. Oh, a sword screamed from the sword body. The Jinpsa, which contained countless magical treasures, was now easily penetrated like a piece of white paper, and a silver rainbow-like flying sword shot directly at Chu Fanglin. Chu Fanglin has stopped. Impossible, this is impossible. My magic weapon can cover everything, how can it be damaged? But she couldn't think about it anymore. Shen Biwa's golden sword had been stuck on her spiritual shield. There was no noise, no light burst, and even Chu Fanglin didn't feel it. Shen Biwa's golden sword saw the shield as nothing, plunged in and stunned, and a handsome head with a high hair bun rolled down. Chu Fanglin's eyes were full of panic, unwillingness, and doubt. As soon as Chu Fanglin died, she shrank immediately. Finally, her body and head turned into a thick piece of drawing paper. Then, Chu Fanglin's Jindan flew out and the drawing paper burned out. Yekong did not destroy her Jindan, watching her escape from the cracked roof. The action to kill Chu Fanglin was too fast, and everyone did not respond. When Chu Fanglin's Jindan escaped, they all reacted. The female faces of the magic demon are as dead as a face. This leaf is too strong. It is like killing an ancestor of Jidan and playing with it. To destroy them, the real people who build the foundation, isn't it like searching for things? This Yekong is really weird, even if it jumps from mortal to fake Dan in the blink of an eye, but even has the magic weapon, it is such a powerful magic weapon, they really want to ask him, what do you want other Zuji real people to do? Live. The people in the Yan family were all excited. Yan Fu came over quickly. Congratulations to my Ant Master for repairing Saring, the magic weapon is overbearing, and the Yan family is saved. Yekong nodded, and yelled at the other disciples of Mozong, don't withdraw the sword array yet, do you want to end like Chu Fanglin? In the sword formation, Yan Fenjiun was blushing with old face, and swallowed his magic weapon with magic when he was unprepared. Alas, it's really shameful. I just told Yekong how powerful his magic weapon is now, and now he has one, and that one is really powerful. As soon as your flying sword appeared, the magic weapons of others were embarrassed. Did the old ancestors live? Yes, Yekong could not vomit a magic weapon, so that the monks in the foundation period and the end of the Dan period did not survive. Those disciples of the video demon sect saw Chu Fanglin hung up, but they dared to withdraw and quickly withdrew the sword array. But at this moment, a loud noise came suddenly from the head. Wow, the top of the grand hall was turned off. A woman stepping on a flying sword stood in the air, looking coldly at the people below. The Mad Cultivator. Author, Xianxia. Chapter 717. Elder Zufei. Elders. Upon seeing this person, the discouraged apprentices of the demon voodoo came to the spirit as if they were hitting a chicken blood needle, each holding a flying sword, raising their chests and staring at Yekong. The visitor is the elder of the picture and sound demon, Zhu Lingfei, the person in charge of the picture and sound demon. Huang Shishi left Huayan Mozong and went out to experience the life of a mortal. He did not know how many lives he would have to take to become a god. In other words, at least hundreds of years will not return. Now Zhu Lingfei thinks it's time to wait. Unlike the other two elders, Mo Lao and Xiao Yingying, Zhu Lingfei is not interested in men. She is more interested in power. She likes the feeling of being elevated and worshipped. When Li Chenzheng was there, she had no chance. I didn't expect Li Chenzheng to go, she still had no chance, which made her very depressed, and even sent someone to spread the rumors of Huang Shishi. And now Huang Shishi has gone, she finally has a chance. Although she is still the title of elder, in fact, she is already the suzerain. But when she reached this height, she realized that the suzerain was not so good. The biggest problem is that you can't convince the crowd, your suzerain cannot contribute to the suzerain, you can't raise everyone's level, and you can't improve everyone's treatment. It is difficult for you to convince the suzerain. As soon as Huang Shishi became the suzerain, he immediately won the artifacts and treasures of hundreds of millions of spirit stones. Everyone in Zhongli had the right to win the support of all elders and disciples. Therefore, Zhu Lingfei also wants to make a contribution to Zhongli, make a name for himself, and improve everyone's life. So what do you do? It happened that the Yan family was selling the best Dadan Dan and the best Yangdan Dan, which made her see hope. If these two medicines were monopolized, the disciples in Zhongli would all be grateful to themselves, and at the same time, they could create a long-term income for Zhongli. Zhu Lingfei moved his brain, this is the previous scene. She was still worried that the Jade Arm God Xian Dragon would come forward, but after waiting for a while, she actually heard the news that Zi Yanlong was about to rise, which made her eager to start. Regarding Yan's family and Yekong, Zhu Lingfei didn't like or be polite, and directly let his most proud disciple, Chu Fanglin, take someone to grab it. I want to come to Zhu Lingfei, this should not be difficult. The Yan family is a Yan Fenjian and Ji Dan Ziawei. His wife and daughter are real people who build the base. The others are minor gas refiners. It should be easy to get started. But when Chu Fanglin went out, Zhu Lingfei was a bit uneasy. After all, this matter was still more important to her. It doesn't matter whether her lordship can sit still. So Zhu Lingfei followed, and remained hidden in the car outside without showing up. But I didn't expect that the good news didn't wait, but it turned out that Jin Fang Chu escaped. Zhu Lingfei was furious. Chu Fanglin and her are still a bit related, and she is also a lover. Yekong. You can be guilty of it, Zhu Lingfei stood in midair and yelled coldly. Convicted, Yekong sneered, really annoyed at such a woman, the hooligan's habit burned up, and he cursed, oh, I know your mother's sin. You are taking advantage of the suzerain's absence. Move the sword. When you look at Yan Jiadan's medicine is good, you are thinking about it, because you are not greedy for money. You send someone here to destroy Ming Fang and rob Dan Fang for robberies. You said you asked me to confess, I'll ask if you know your sin or not. Zhu Lingfei was scolded by him, and he was furious. Okay, Yekong, you can speak brilliantly. Everything in this world is for those who have the power. The strength of the Yan family is not as good as mine, so you must give me Dan Fang. It depends on whether you have the ability to take it. Yekong was also not polite, he directly offered Shen Biwa's golden sword, and a silver Changhong straightened to take all the Lingfei in the air. The magic weapon also dares to attack me, Zhu Lingfei put one hand in his hand. Baby lock space. Baby lock space is the most commonly used and most effective imprisonment spell for Monk Yu and Ying. Zhu Lingfei raised his hand and used it to control Yekong's magic flying sword. But Shen Biwa's golden sword broke the baby lock space as early as in the mortal area of Kangbei, how could it be locked?
I saw the golden dot on the flying sword flash again, breaking through the space and attacking Zhu Lingfei. Zhu Lingfei did not expect that this magic weapon was so powerful that she could break through the baby lock space. Seeing the flying sword attacked, she quickly evaded her. A good magic weapon. Zhu Lingfei nodded and said, I didn't expect you to be so simple. In just 1 year, you have changed from a mortal person to a fake Dan real person, and you have actually developed such a domineering magic weapon. She looked at Shen Bihui's golden sword again and nodded. This magic weapon belongs to me. I want to take it back to see what kind of magic weapon it is. It is so powerful to break defenses. Yekong sneered. Is another woman who speaks loudly. Just now someone who wanted to take my magic weapon has become Jin Dan. Could the elders also want to be a Yuanying state? Zhu Lingfei chuckled and said, You're so restless. My disciple was just a midterm practitioner of Jidan. I didn't expect your magical power to be overbearing. This was the trick, and now you meet me. After Zhu Lingfei finished speaking, his gaze was fixed, and the momentum of the late monk swinged away. The power of a master monk in the late Yuanying period is unimaginable. Zhu Lingfei burst into a sigh and pointed Shen Bihui's golden sword with his right hand. Painting. This painting technique is the unique elementary magic power of the picture and sound magic demon. After use, it can imitate an artistic conception space that approximates the gods and kings, so that the opponent's magic weapon is isolated. Below, everyone saw a grand landscape painting suddenly appearing in the sky. There were mountains and rivers, white clouds and cranes, green trees and red flowers, and at the same time, the sound of sacred lotus waves could be heard. And that Shen Bihui gold sword seemed to hear Xianxia, and there was no more mighty power, and it flew to the void scroll, as if to be sucked in. Want to win my magic weapon? You dream. Yekong Qiang raised aura, and flew in the air under the might of Zhu Lingfei. Yekong caught up with his magic weapon, reached out and grabbed it, and then raised Shen Bihui's golden sword over his head. This hate is endless. Yekong was furious, so he actually used the second layer of the sword-cutting sword. The first layer of the sword's gasification silk had already made the ground ripe, but the second layer had not been deployed because of the cultivation. Now Yekongziu is soaring, it is only one step away from Jidan, and it is easy to use the second layer. To the reader. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Mad Cultivator. Author, Xianxia. Chapter 718. Tortured for 1,000 years. This sword can be described as earth-shattering. The power of the sword repair is not generally strong. Quite early, the sword of Jing Quan's ancestors, but even the gold corpse of the early Yuanying blocked. I saw a sword flying from the sky, the brightness of the white light was like thunder and lightning, the sword light formed a grand arc, and chopped on the void scroll. Boom boom boom. The huge boom was constantly remembered, deafening, and everyone in the iron painting realm heard this boom. The first layer of chopped sword tactics is to condense the sword chi, while the second layer is to merge the sword chi. Yekong's sword chi contains hundreds of sword chi. The sword is endless, one after another, without giving each other any respite, endless. This is exactly this hate endless. If one sword isn't broken, I will chop your 100 swords and 1,000 swords. Finally, there is a sword that breaks your spell. This sword is just right for Yekong's character, and it is quite easy to use. Eventually, the scroll of the painting's imagination was untenable, and it made a loud noise, completely collapsed, and invisible. Even Zhu Lingfei was shocked. Although this painting technique is not his most powerful trick, it is also a magical power dedicated to Yuanying. Generally, the old ancestors of Dan can't be defeated, but this real person who is only in the realm of Dan can be defeated with one sword. The most frightening thing is, what kind of magic is this sword chi? How so powerful? The power is simply staggering.
If you wait for this boy to break through a few more layers, then do you still use this as a Yuanying Zhenjun? Zhu Lingfei really moved to kill. Originally, she wanted to teach Ye Kong something, and he took away his powerful magic weapon. After all, she had to consider the relationship between Ye Kong and Zi Yanlong, and Huang Shishi. But when she saw Ye Kong showing her super strength, she started to kill, so that the adversary could not keep him, and sooner or later he would become his own confidant. Good sword strength. If I am just the real junior of the infant, maybe I really have to suffer a lot, but I am the real junior of the late Yuanying, so even if you are strong, it is still not mine. Opponent. Zhu Lingfei gave a loud scream, his hands were pointing at Ye Kong, and he saw 5-colored Guanghua shot in both hands at the same time. Pioneer Pen Sword. According to legend, the ancient monk Kaishan from the paintings and sounds learned something when painting, using powerful aura as a pen and the earth as a volume, like a pen and a sword, to draw a picture of the dream in his heart. The strength of the monk in the late Yuanying period can be described as devastating. It is not a real person who can counter it. No matter how strong Ye Kong is, he can't stop this. Of course, Ye Kong won't be stupid enough to block, but can't beat but flashes. Just when he was about to hide in the Peepa's space, a person suddenly moved around him. A woman's face is slightly mature and her body is a mess. Especially a huge pair of melon on her chest can directly spray men. Painting brush sword. The ancestors of Kaishan used it to draw beautiful and moving scenes, but you just want to draw the in your heart, how can you exert its power? With a wave of his sleeve, the 5-colored pen sword was swept away instantly and all disappeared. Seeing this woman, all the disciples of Mozong underneath were all ashamed, and they all fell down on their knees and worshipped, greeting to the Lord. Zhu Lingfei also froze, startled. Huang Shishi, why are you here? Suddenly a cold snoring around, we are all here. Zhu Lingfei looked around and saw that Mo Lao and Elder Xiao Yingying also came, and there was a large group of disciples behind. You haven't left the iron painting realm, Zhu Lingfei understood this time. Huang Shishi smiled lightly, how can I leave without worrying about you? So you gave me a trap, Zhu Lingfei glared at Huang Shishi. Huang Shishi shook her head, it's not a trap, it's just a test. If you are honest and well managed of this sect, I will really have gone through many mortal lives, but you haven't. Zhu Lingfei angered, why didn't I? I also wanted to draw the sound of the magic ancestors. The best Da Dan Dan and the best Yang Dan Dan Fang God. My disciples also had a large amount of Dan medicine. You can earn spiritual stones. Sovereign, may I ask you, where am I wrong? Is it because the little white face and you are unclear, that makes the Lord distressed? Zhu Lingfei said such a thing in public. Of course Huang Shishi was furious and did not explain. He shouted, Zhu Lingfei, with your vilification of the Lord, you can send news that is not good for me and damages the reputation of this case, and I can handle it. You. However, because you are my equivalent, I won't kill you, just give me 1,000 years. When Huang Shishi finished speaking, as soon as she raised her hand, I saw a small pagoda in Bai Shenzhen's hand. As soon as the little tower came out, it immediately became larger. At the same time, every window on the tower was lit red. This tower has 7 floors, each floor is a different color. Kikialinglong Tower. When Zhu Lingfei saw this tower, he was astounded. It turned out that the 7-trick tower is not so simple as a wall, there is dedicated to the captives of enemies. Do you think that there are enemies in it, so that he can practice with peace of mind? Of course not. The tower is like a purgatory. Each floor has different tortures. When you get used to this layer, you will enter the next layer, which makes the detainees painless. Zhu Lingfei was startled, Master, you are going to torture me for 1,000 years for this kid. It's not for him, you deserve it. Huang Shishi condensed, Yuanying's great momentum was released,
holding the pagoda in his hand, magnificent. Zhongji, forgive me, Zhu Lingfei finally knew that she was afraid, and she quickly knelt down and scratched her head. It's late. Huang Shishi drank Tota in one hand, and Zhu Lingfei in one finger, and shouted, "Give me it." Don't. Zhu Lingfei suddenly thought of something again, shook his body and turned into a natal picture, shouted, "I'm a slave to the suzerain." Huang Shishi ignored her and hummed, "It's better for you to cultivate. What do I want from you? Take it." The red door on the bottom floor of Kekialinglong Tower suddenly popped open, and a beam of light inside it locked the picture scrolls that Zhu Fei became. Then I saw the scrolls scrolling along the light beam, flipping, and flying into the small door on the first floor, while I heard Zhu Lingfei's miserable shout, "Don't." Pop, as the door closed, the beam disappeared and Zhu Lingfei was put into the Kekialinglong Tower. But Huang Shishi was startled, because Zhu Lingfei miraculously disappeared as soon as he entered the tower. Very weird. It is unimaginable that, being enveloped by the beams of Kekialinglong Pagoda, can he even escape? No, it's not escape. It was taken away by someone else's space weapon. And this person's space weapon is much more powerful than Kekialinglong Tower. The Mad Cultivator. Author, Xianxia. Chapter 719. 17-9 received another 14. Huang Shishi's cold eyes swept around. But the only person standing beside her was Ye Kong, everyone else was standing far away, and the space implements had a distance to collect things. If so, the only possibility is Ye Kong. If it was someone else, Huang Shishi might not believe it, but Ye Kong, this guy gave too many surprises, and it was normal to have a space weapon. Huang Shishi said, "Little fan, what do you mean? I will help you to cure her, but you rescue her." Ye Kong looked innocent. What, who did I save? I didn't move. Did you not take Zhu Lingfei? She wasn't taken into the tower by you. Everyone saw it. Isn't it for you? Huang Shishi looked into someone's eyes and finally nodded doubtfully. Forget it, this woman doesn't do me any good. You are useless, I am useful. Ye Kong thought smugly. He didn't save Zhu Lingfei with good intentions, but saw Zhu Lingfei's destiny picture scrolling into thought. Although this woman is annoying, after all, it is the strength of Yuan Ying's later period. If she is tamed, she will have another fighter in the future. I heard that as long as she controls her natal painting, she can't betray her, and she doesn't know the truth. Because Ye Kong had a good grasp of the opportunity, none of the people at the scene could see that Zhu Lingfei was accepted by others, and thought she had entered the Kekialinglong Tower. Only Huang Shishi knew that she had not entered. Ye did not admit death. Huang Shishi didn't say much, and stared at the more than 10 female disciples. These more than a dozen female disciples are all disciples of Chu Fanglin, and also apprentices to Zhu Lingfei. They were not liked by Huang Shishi originally. Now Zhu Lingfei is taken in, and their end will be miserable. The female disciples all kneeled down and said they wanted to be loyal to Huang Shishi, but Huang Shishi didn't even want Zhu Lingfei. How could he care about them? However, Mo Lao and Xiao Yingying came out to confess, and told them to give them more than a dozen people, they need some escorts. A group of 14 disciples are all real people in Zuji. They honestly turned into scrolls. Mo Lao and Xiao Yingying each received 7. Here is the end of the matter. Huang Shishi also said inconveniently to Ye Kongduo, she wants to go back to the audiovisual demon to completely pull up the forces of Zhu Lingfei. Huang Shishi lost a moving white eye to Ye Kong, boy, come back and interrogate you. Be careful with that woman, be careful she eats the Lord. After Huang Shishi finished speaking, he waved his hand lazily, Hui Zone. Ye Kong was nervous when she heard her say this. After all, he didn't even have Dan. It was not easy to control the master monk after Yuan Ying, but the strength of Yuan Ying in the later period was too strong. Don't listen to her, Scare you, just don't give her the picture of her destiny. Suddenly another voice sounded. Yekong looked at it, but Mo Lao came over. As soon as Yehalo was tight, even Mo Lao could see it. Yekong didn't answer, just smiled. Mo Lao threw him a storage bag, then turned and left. Another elder Xiaoying also jumped over. Don't look at her as young as 14 or 5, like a little girl. But if you look at her practice in the middle of Yuan, you know that she is definitely not a little girl. Huang Shishi called her Xiaoying. Yekong didn't dare, and he was quick to be kind. What else is Yingying really like? Xiaoying laughed. Brother Yekong, Mo Lao sees that you don't have a storage bag. I'll send you a storage bag, so I will send you some pictures, just to reunite their ancestors and grandchildren. Yekong heard it, stunned. I thought I was hiding, but I didn't expect to see it. Fortunately, he didn't make things difficult for him, and gave away those rudimentary Jurchens to himself. Yekong took Xiao Yingying's 7 paintings and thanked him. Xia Yingying Jun, Ye is grateful. But Xiao Yingying laughed and said, don't thank you anymore, you can go and play the magic zone when you have time, find me to play. Yekong nodded, and just when he wanted to say yes, he heard Xiao Yingying say again, Mo Lao also wants you to play with her. Yekong Xian fainted. It turned out to be the play. Forget it, Buddy's tastes are not so unique. Granny, underage, let's not go. As soon as they left, Yekong took a look at the storage bag given by Mo Lao. There were also 7 paintings in it, and 14 female-based disciples became their own. Similarly, Yekong threw them all into the Pipazu space. The voice-over demon was gone. Yan Shuai said resentfully, our house has been demolished by that woman, and they should compensate. Yehalo said, in fact, people have already compensated, a beautiful female slave in the late Yuanying period, how much is it worth? In any case, there was no surprise and Yekong became very serious. The Yan family was very happy. Even the severely injured Wu Xiaoling was also very happy. Take Wu Xiaoling back to the room to rest. She also pulled Yekondeo, Xiao, you repaired it, we are even happier, and our family Shuai will not have to worry about us. Yekong wanted to say, sister, we are pretending to be married. Seems like this relationship doesn't matter now. Do you want me to be your uncle? But looking at Wu Xiaoling being injured, Yekong didn't say anything, only nodded. Next, Yan Fenjiun led Yekong and Yan Shuai to a kiosk in the backyard. At this moment, the trees are full of red flowers, and the breeze is pleasant, sitting in the kiosk, enjoying the scenery, drinking, not to mention how leisurely. Yan Fenjiun asked, Xianxia, I didn't expect you to be so high, and the magic weapon is so good. The old man really blossomed in his heart. I don't know how Xianyi plans. The old man took a sip, and Yekong said nothing. Now that he is recovering, Yan Shuai's crisis has been lifted, and 2 things are cleared up. It doesn't matter if everyone does not owe anyone. Yekong coughed, cleared his throat, and said, Senior Yan, I'm here now, and I'll leave soon. A word from Yekong changed the face of Yan Fenjiun and Yan Shuai. They both knew that Yekong would leave when they left the gate, but at this moment, they felt unacceptable. Yan Fenjiun squeezed out a smile and said, Xiang, you are now building a great consummation, and you are about to get rid of Dan. Why don't you go to my house to get rid of Dan, and the old man will help you find it? Yekong knew that Yan Fenjiun wanted to stay and looked at Yan Shuai's expectation, but he still shook his head. Xia Yan's kindness, Ye has a big deal, and he hates that he cannot return to his hometown beyond Yunyeo's 8,000 realms. Stay for a while and delay, I also want to leave Dan afterwards, but it takes too long to get into Dan. I have heard people say that they have gotten Dan for 10 years, and some people say that they have got Dan for 60 years. I dare not imagine. Yekong sighed. The Mad Cultivator.
Author, Xianxia. Chapter 720. 200 Shui Drunk. It takes too long to get dandan. If you really do it for decades, when you go back, your aging mother and Lu Xiaohong will not become a pile of dead bones. So, Senior Yan still doesn't want to stay. Senior's kindness to the next is put in this glass, please. Yekong raised his glass and drank it. Yan Fenjiun is also helpless. Everyone has talked about this, what else can he say? Then, Yekongja talked to him about Taihua Jing's events in the past year. And Yan Shuai, who was sitting next to her, lowered her head, drinking from cup to cup, and poured out sadness. Yan Shuai was distressed and couldn't say. This kind of sorrow was not uncomfortable. She had to drink hard. It is difficult to say that the monk was drunk, but this girl actually lay on the table staggering until she finally drank it. Yan Fenjiun and Yekong were talking about the purple smoke on his body, and they heard a crackle, and Yan Shuai lay on the table. Yan Fenjiun looked at her daughter and said with distress, Shu Hui is bitter in her heart, don't look at her unconscious all day. In fact, Yedaiu, if you really want to help the husband, take her back to the room, be a real couple for a day. After Yan Fenjiun finished speaking, he hurried away, and there were only Yekong and Yan Shuai in the small pavilion. In fact, Yan Fenjiun's mind, Yekong understood that the old man wanted him to have a relationship with Yan Shuai, and it is best to keep a child. Even if there is no seed left, Yekong has really become Yan Shuifujun, and he will not leave, leaving Yekong a thought, and he will come back in the future. Even Yekong suspected that Yan Shuai's wine had been tampered with by the old man. However, Yekong could not do such a thing. Yan Shuai, a big girl, did what she really did, and then made her wait forever. This was not appropriate. Besides, Yan Shuai is really interesting to herself. Everyone's father and mother let themselves go, but they didn't go. Oops, it's so noble, it's about to catch up with Lu Ziawai. Yekong smiled bitterly, picked up Yan Shuai, and sent her back to the room. I didn't enter the room for a year, and when I saw the big red high word on the door, Yekong couldn't help but sigh. At that time, they only used each other. Who knew that the sad ending was coming? It was unexpected. Not only is the red happiness word still on, but the brocade is also there. Yekong walked in now, even if he felt like he was alive, he was a bit lost. Taking off Yan Shuai's embroidered shoes and putting her on the couch, Ye took a breath. Suddenly, he felt the delicate waist bag hanging around his waist, and his heart moved, which was given to himself by Yan Shuai, who was in the military. Although Yekong and the Yan family do not owe each other now, Yekong still feels that he owes something and owes a love to Yan Shuai. Yekong sat sideways on the couch, leaning his head, looking at the smooth red cloud, and gently reaching out to rub. But Yan Shuai grabbed his hand and murmured, Brother Yekong, don't worry, I will never leak your danfang. Yekong smiled. This girl was also a believer. She was not persecuted by Chu Fanglan. She was a good girl. Thinking of this, his compassion rose, and he moved to her again, stroking her warm and smooth face, and said softly, no matter how important danfang is, no one's life is important, let alone ordinary. The grandfather of Dan is also raising a dandan, and next time he encounters such a thing, he will hand it over directly, and I won't blame you. Yan Shuai stumbled and didn't hear it at all. She just felt the heat in a certain population tickling under her ears. She closed her eyes and exclaimed, don't make a noise. Talking, she lifted her two arms and caught Yekong's neck. Yekong's face was pulled closer by her a lot. So close, you can clearly see the tiny fluff on the girl's smooth face, the tender redness seeping under the tender white skin, and the tiny lines on the full lips. Even someone who has been tried for a long time has a sense of speeding up. When Ye and somebody were fighting with each other, he heard Yan Shuai whisper a soft voice, Fujun. This sound,
like a sound of nature, directly plunges someone's reason. The confused Xianxia didn't know how to respond. She just hugged Yekong's head as if to pull the man into her body to be happy. Yekong is also sensible, he didn't do more, just held Xianxia's face with both hands and kissed her little mouth. Although the two Yan family members agreed, although Xianxia did not blame him, he could not do it. After all, it is likely that he will never come back this time. He came here by accident. He wanted to find his way home. After returning home, can he come to Yunyo again, can he come to Iron Painting Realm again? It's really hard to say let's kiss. This dear, I don't know how much time I have kissed, as if I can't wait to let go. When Xianxia let go of her mouth and turned over to the bed again, she said to herself, confused, Fujun, don't go, I know you think my spiritual roots are bad, and my cultivation is bad, I will work hard to cultivate. No. Yekong sighed and suddenly had a new idea. With this idea, he was relieved, patted Xianxia's head, and laughed, sleep well, and talk to you when you wake up. Then, he went to the symbol pad in the room, sat cross-legged, and began to do business. First of all, what he remembers most is Huang Zixuan in Swimizu. I haven't seen her for more than a year. Has her soul grown? To what extent? Can you speak like Yu Minghui's aunt? Taking out Swimizu, Yekong was still very happy. Although Huang Zixuan hasn't been able to speak and laugh like Wei Yang, her growth over the past year has made her slightly human. You know, when you put her in, the soul with a few strands of hair can now become a human figure, which is already very good. Zixuan, rest assured, I will definitely save you, Yekong secretly swears, putting Shuesuezu into the storage ring. The next thing to look at is the pipa beads. When Yehalo read it, the pipa beads flew out of the purple house Lingtai. However, the current pipa beads make Yekong almost unrecognizable. The old pipa beads were off-white, with many fine lines on the surface, just like a white stone. Now, this pipa bead has become a bead for Heikaiokyu. Is this my pipa bead? Yekong froze, thinking immediately, could Chiukuabeng's kid make a name in space? Yekong's figure flickered, and disappeared in situ immediately. Only a black round ball floated in the air. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Mad Cultivator. Author, Xianxia. Chapter 721. July 21st became mortal. The space of Pipazu is Yekong's private space. He can do whatever he wants. After entering, he did not show up. Here he is God, and the rules of heaven here are all determined by him, not to mention stealth. As soon as he entered the pipa beads, Yekong immediately discovered that the space inside had grown, the area of the ground had expanded from dozens of acres to 100 acres, and the black band outside the ground had also been moved back a lot. It seems that this pipa bead can expand its area with the increase of repairs, but what is the outer side of that black forbidden layer? Yekong is full of curiosity. Then he went to see Chiukuabeng. Good guy, this guy hasn't finished the fusion yet, and he saw that a large piece of transparent soil lay in the spirit stone, and one of the golden and bright Jindan seemed to fall asleep. Of course, Zhu Lingfei and the 14 big girls were not idle either, they were busy exploring. Master, there are so many spirit stones, there is a monster, a female disciple reported. Zhu Lingfei said, everyone must be careful. We are in extraterrestrial space. Those spirit stones are likely to be transformed by demons. Seeing the fear of the women, Zhu Lingfei patted her high and said, everyone is afraid, at least I am a monk in the late Yuanying period. It is not so easy for any demon to defeat me. Although it is desolate here, only you can practice with aura, which is good. When we have explored the neighborhood clearly, we will define this large area as our sphere of influence. Yekong fainted, This woman really ran in her own private space to fight the world. Also divide the sphere of influence. Oh, elders, what are you doing? Yekong's voice sounded in the sky, just like thunder. Zhu Lingfei immediately became furious and shouted, Yekong, Xiao. You must not pretend to be a ghost. Yekong asked, Elders, I rescued you from the tower of exquisite jealousy, to save you thousands of years of pain. You don't know to thank me, and people who don't know how to be thankful will live in pain. Zhu Lingfei angered, who wants you to save me? You let me out. Let you out? Impossible, you should stay with me first. Zhu Lingfei, like crazy, spit out magic weapons and shouted, if you dream, I will not be controlled by your little Zuji real person, watch me smash your space. Zhu Lingfei's magic weapon is a black and white flying sword. Yuan Ying's later repairs are truly extraordinary. When the sword goes down, the land splits and it is another sword, and the pond becomes two halves. However, she was all in vain. Yahalo thought, everything in the space returned to the original, the grass or the grass, the pond or the pond, everything returned to the original scene. Zhu Lingfei is unbelief, or he is chaotic, almost affecting Qiu Qiuaveng who is lying and integrating. Yekong was a little angry, and his heart moved again. This is his space, he is the here, he can do whatever he wants, he can do whatever he wants. What thunders and rains, and the mountains and rivers change, are all pediatrics. He can change many of the rules here, of course, not all of them. At least his laws of time and space are currently out of control. However, he can control the spiritual power and aura in the space. After his heart moved, Zhu Lingfei's cultivation was immediately lost, and she became immortal in an instant. Her magic weapon could not be called, her magic weapon could not be called, and even the storage bag could not be opened. Impossible. How can this be? Zhu Lingfei was panicked. She was used to the feeling of power, and she couldn't adapt to this life without power. Yekong Leng hummed, you have too much power and power, look down on people who are below you, and treat mortals as ants, I will let you taste the days without cultivation, and you feel better. Yekong not only turned her into a mortal, but also turned the other 14 real people who built the base into mortals. If you want to tame them, you must first let them suffer. Then Yekong imposed a ban on Qiu Qiuaveng again, absolutely prohibiting them from disturbing Qiu Qiuaveng. Then Yekong went out. But Yekong forgot one thing, that these people became mortals, and even the ability to break the valley was lost. In this space, there was nothing to eat, and Zhu Lingfei and others were really sinned. Of course, Yekong didn't realize this at this time, he collected the spirit stones in the space, and left the space. Light and shadow flickered in the room, Yekong was back, clutching the black bead. Yekong really didn't know why the Pipa bead became like this. But there are things that he can't figure out at the moment. Just as he came out of the quiet room before, the purple smoke emitted from his body, he didn't know what was going on. So he decided not to, and tossed the beads back to Zifu, and he stopped by to see the curse book there. Seeing the Daquan, he was a bit pleased. With the increase of the level, he can now see all of the inferior high-level charms. Yekong concluded that the characteristics of Xiaopan charm are like this. Inferior low level, single attack less powerful. Inferior products are medium level, with single unit attack as the main group attack, but a small group attack, but the power of group attack is not great. The high ranking of the lower grade is all group attacks, and the power is huge. It can be said to be a large-scale attack, especially a new type of lightning attack spell. If you look at the name, you know that the power is amazing. Thunder Prison Spell. I wonder how powerful this spell is. At the same time, Yekong had a fantasy about the spells at the next higher level, which are all inferior spells. So what is the Chinese spell? In Yunfuzong, I heard people talk about the highest level of spells, which can tear up space, allow time to flow backwards, and destroy the world. I do not know if it is true or false. After reading the spell, he remembered the matter of the black demon. Yekong is really curious about this mysterious black demon. What is this place? What is going on here? In particular, the transmission ability of the black demon sovereign let Yekong be amazed. He could teleport from the Kangbei mainland to Yunyeo. Can the black demon sovereign be transmitted back? However, there are more than 28 million spirit stones. This is not a small amount. It is really painful to give Wu this money to pay off the debt. These are real gold and silver. Taking out all of his spirit stones and calculating, Yekong found that he couldn't make up 28 million. A total of 14 million spirit stones were searched for in the Demon Abyss Valley, and the rest were eaten up by the soil. He won 12 million spirit stones in Mozong in the market, plus hundreds of thousands of his own. A total of almost 27 million was almost a gap, and there was a gap of more than 1 million. Thinking of this, Yekong had only temporarily stopped his urge to go to the Black Demon sect. While he was idle, he was listening to someone outside, like an iron-armed demon. A joy on Yekong's face. Can I get some spirit stones from Zi Yanlong? The Mad Cultivator. Author, Xianxia. Chapter 722. 72 Purple Flame Dragon. The iron-armed demon came from a pair of men and women, saying that it was the jade-armed Xian dragon who knew what happened today and wanted Yekong to go back. Yan Fenjiun thought that his daughter and son-in-law were doing bad things inside. How could people be disturbed? Right now they are not allowed to call Yekong. But the rush came and said that Zi Yanlong wanted Yekong to go back with them. They were arguing a little outside, and even Yekong in the room heard it. Iron-armed demon, who didn't come just now I know that the caller called me. Yekong snorted angrily, but thought of preparing to change some spirit stones from Zi Yanlong, and went out now. He went out and saw the two people who came. He knew each other. Here came his opponent Zheng Tianshun, and the woman turned out to be Wang Yuding, who was beaten by Zheng Tianshun. I haven't seen it for a year. Zheng Tianshun has already practiced to the 4th layer of gas refining, and Wang Yuding has also reached the 4th layer of gas refining. It seems that the iron-armed demon sect practice is still very fast. It's just that the arms of these two people are no longer in shape. Zheng Tianshun said that a man's arms were black, but Wang Yuding's house was 2 black arms. Although she was wearing a coat, the 2 black hands were really not good looking. No wonder a few women are willing to join iron-armed demon. Brother Zheng, Miss Wang, it's been a long absence. Yekong came out on the ceremony. When Yan Fenjiun saw Yekong's clothes neatly, he sighed. It is estimated that there was no story today. He didn't tell much, smiled, and waved away. While Zheng Tianshun looked at Yekong, they were all confused. Zheng Tianshun has received news that Yekong has risen to the completion of Zuji. This is something he would never believe. 1 year ago, everyone was still mortal. At the same starting point, he had practiced Tianshun even fast, second only to Xiaochen's drunk, but who knows that Yekong has arrived at Zuji grade. In the end, the woman is more exquisite, and Wang Yuding hurried forward to salute. Uncle Ye, the suzerain asked us to come back to visit him. Zheng Tianshun saw Yekong's Ziawei, and only smiled bitterly, arching his hand. Uncle Ye, congratulations. You have become a fake Dan live 1 year. Presumably Dan is also in the near future. This person's eyes were not bad. Yekong didn't hit him, and laughed. Don't be discouraged. In fact, I already had the cultivation period of the foundation period, but I was later killed by an adulterer, so I lost the cultivation behavior. Replying to cultivation is of course faster than cultivation. I believe that you will have a day to build a foundation. Hearing Yekong's answer, Zheng Tianshun was relieved and said, it turned out that Uncle Ye was already a real human being. It's ridiculous that we still underestimated Uncle Ye at the time. We all want to defeat you. Now think about it. That's funny. Yekong nodded, patted the storage bag, and took out 2 handles of middleware to give them. There are too many middle-class instruments, low-class instruments, Yekong, killing people in Kangnan, he is useless, it is better to take out and fill people. Zheng Tianxun's grandfather is of transformation. Of course he doesn't care about Chinese products, but since Yekui gave it away, he also accepted it. And Wang Yuding also accepted it very happily. Although her family is also a family, there are no elders of the gods, and the Chinese instruments are also very good. At least for their current cultivation, they can be used. Let's go. The 3 went all the way to Iron Arm Demon. As soon as I inquired on the road, although Wang Yuding was eliminated, she was a woman. Iron Arm Demon didn't know how many years the woman had been confiscated, and she wanted to take one, so she made an exception afterwards. Wang Yuding looks good, although she has blackened her 2 arms. But all the men in Iron Arm Demon are like this, everyone is accustomed to see, they are not used to white arms. So Wanlu was a little red, and Iron Arm Demon set off a climax to pursue Wang Yuding. But unfortunately, Wang Yuding didn't even look at anyone, so she looked at Zheng Tianxun who punched her on the ring. This is really incredible. Yekong looked at Wang Yuding, and Zheng Tianxun, and said, this is really a fate of fist. Zheng Tianxun is really a peach luck. A merciless punch turned Wang Yuding. It's really hard to imagine being beaten up. At the door of Iron Arm Demon, Yekong had no idea but encountered a little trouble. This year's entry contest has just ended, so many unmarried crushes are blocked out of the Iron Arm Demon sect, waiting for the first Yu Guangping this year to meet them and say a few words. Yu Guangping is naturally proud of himself, and he doesn't know what his surname is. I just saw Yekong and others coming over. Yu Guangping knew this last player. Of course, he could not get the news that Yekong was already a fake Dan. 1 year after watching Xianxia, his arms were not dark. Yu Guangping despised it, and dared to love you for 1 year. Ordinary. Well, let's compare these 2 mortals. In front of many crushes, bullying the last champion, wow, it's really cool. Hey, I said to you, who are you not? Yu Guangping pointed at Yekong who was passing by with a stern gesture. Yekong froze, wondering what this person called himself, pointing to his nose and wondering, call me. Yeah, I'm calling you. Yu Guangping came over, said a hoarse step, and said, this brother, I want to challenge you. Challenge me? Yekong didn't go out for a year. He didn't know this person at all. Looking at his cultivation, he was just a mortal. Yekong laughed, who are you? You challenge me? Are we hated? Zheng Tianxun smiled and said, this is the first Yu Guangping who entered the competition this year. Yu Guangping was identified by others, and he was even more refreshed. He shook his head and wowed his tail. I heard that you were the first one in the last session. I would like to ask for advice to see if it is not as good as 1 session, or 1 session is worse than 1 session. Why? Brother, are you afraid? Oh, Yekong laughed out loud. Some people just don't know how to live or die, they think it's not good enough, and they feel as funny as an ant looking for an elephant. So what are you talking about? Yekong smiled lightly and looked at this Yu Guangping with interest. Of course it's better than real kung fu, Yu Guangping said with a bite. I'm afraid I'll hurt you. I see there are 2 stone lions over there. How can we lift the stone lions more often than anyone? Yu Guangping finished pointing to the stone lion outside the distant mountain gate, and then nodded to the fans, which immediately caused a scream. Yu Guangping is practicing foreign skills and is extremely powerful. Such a stone lion can lift dozens of steps and walk dozens of steps on his back, so he has such great arrogance. Who knew? Yekongji laughed, stretched out his hand, and gently moved, and the stone lion flew up like a piece of paper. Yekong pressed a finger against the base of the stone lion and asked, number 1 this year, do you mean this stone lion? Suddenly all those fans screamed, most of them knew Yekong, and someone immediately shouted, Yekong! Yekong! Yu Guangping knew that he was kicked on the iron plate this time, and his own ability was far from others. His face flushed with redness, and he held up and said, yes, this is the stone lion. We are not allowed to use spiritual power, we are not allowed to use spells, we are not allowed to use anything, we just rely on strength, you dare not compare. Yekong was funny, you mother is stupid to practice your skills. Do you think the porters on the dock are trying? At the moment, even if you are better than you can't compare with me, or I can say one and guarantee you can win. Yu Guangping joyfully said, you say. We have more than anyone, and we guarantee you a steady win. As soon as Yekong's words came out, everyone around them laughed.